All right, everybody, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive. And today we're going to be tackling a question that I'm sure has crossed every parent's mind at some point. Like, is this just my kid being a kid, or is this something more? Yeah, the drill. We got a question from a listener who's a little concerned about their little one who, let's just say, has a penchant for pedestrian nonconformity. They're walking backwards. And it's got this parent wondering if it's a sign of something more, like autism. So to guide us on this little exploration, we're going to be taking a look at this article from medicsignal.com called "Is Walking Backwards a Hidden Sign of Autism?" Catchy title, right? And just a heads up, they don't beat around the bush. The article comes right out and says that, yeah, walking backwards is more common in autistic children. So,
but here's the thing. It's important to remember that it's not like a core diagnostic symptom or anything. Like, you know how a lot of kids are obsessed with dinosaurs?
oh yeah,
That doesn't mean they're all going to be paleontologists,
well, I
right?
like where you're going with this.
It's just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
So to our listener out there, freaking out a little bit, don't abandon ship just yet. If your little one's doing laps in reverse around the living room, there are a bunch of reasons why this might be happening, and the article digs into a few like sensory processing differences. Can you unpack that one a little? I feel like that's a big one when we're talking about toddlers.
Absolutely. Imagine you're experiencing the world with the volume turned up to 11 on everything. The lights are brighter, the sounds are louder, every texture is amplified.
Sensory overload central.
Exactly. For some kids, walking backwards might be their way of literally turning down the visual input.
Their own personal dimmer switch for life.
Exactly. And while we're talking about senses, the article also mentions proprioception, which it's basically like your body's internal GPS system.
Yeah.
It's what helps you understand where you are in space. And, some kids just take a little longer to develop that internal map.
Interesting. So if their internal GPS is still buffering backward, walking is just their way of navigating for now.
Kind of. And look, every kid is different, right? What might seem like a red flag for one child might just be another kid's way of saying, hey, I'm doing things my own way.
You got to love that independent streak though, right?
But our listener's little one is under 4, which I think adds a whole other layer to this.
Yeah.
At what age should we start to maybe be a little more concerned about this backward walking? Well, the article mentions the age of 3 or 4 as being kind of a turning point.
Yeah, okay.
Before that age, backward walking is about as common as like finding a rogue goldfish cracker under the couch.
So basically it's everywhere.
Pretty much. They're still figuring out this whole walking thing. Coordination and balance. Sometimes that means taking the scenic route.
Makes sense. It's like they've graduated from toddler navigation to like not needing to apologize for running into things all the time.
Exactly. But after 3 or 4, most kids have figured out that walking forward is, well, it's just generally the most efficient way to get around.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. But the article did mention some red flags to watch out for in this age group.
Right, like if backward walking is their main way of getting around, that's something to keep an eye on. And especially if it's happening alongside other things, like maybe delays in speech or social interaction.
Right.
Or if they're really into repetitive behaviors.
Okay.
Those are all pieces of the puzzle worth discussing with your pediatrician.
And speaking of seeing the whole child, it's important to remember that this deep dive isn't about diagnosing anyone. It's about giving our listener the information they need to have informed conversations with their pediatrician.
Exactly. This is about arming you with knowledge, not anxiety.
Right.
A true autism diagnosis is comprehensive. We're talking communication, social interaction, repetitive behaviors, the whole 9 yards.
So instead of playing armchair psychologist based on one behavior, we're encouraging our listeners to be curious, observant, and, most importantly, to talk to their pediatrician if they have any concerns.
Exactly. And while we're on the topic of being proactive, the article does offer some really great practical tips, regardless of whether autism is even a factor.
Oh, I love a good practical tip.
Hit me. First and foremost, create a safe space for your little reverse engineer.
Okay.
That might mean doing a sweep for any obstacles, securing rugs, or maybe using visual cues like colored tape to help them navigate.
Love it. So we're not discouraging the behavior, we're just making it a little safer.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be all serious business. Turn walking forward into a game.
Oh, this is where I shine.
Use their favorite toys as encouragement. Have races make it fun.
Turn everyday life into an Olympic sport.
There you go.
This has been eye-opening. We've tackled the why behind backward walking, explored potential links to autism, and most importantly emphasized that early intervention and a supportive environment are key.
Couldn't have said it better myself. But I do think it's important to remember that every child develops at their own pace.
Fake and comparison is the thief of joy, especially when it comes to parenting.
100%. So to our listeners, celebrate every milestone, big or small, and remember there's no one-size-fits-all approach to this whole parenting thing. But before we wrap up, I do have one final thought.
Ooh, I love where this is going. Lay it on me.
What if instead of focusing on stopping the backward walking, we see it as an opportunity to better understand your child's unique way of experiencing the world?
Okay, now I really love this reframing.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
It's about shifting our perspective from like fixing to understanding. What if instead of seeing it as a problem, we approach it with a sense of curiosity?
Because let's be real for a second. Kids, especially little kids, they're not exactly known for their ability to articulate, what's going on in those amazing developing brains of theirs.
Exactly. Your child is engaging in this behavior for a reason, even if they can't tell you what that reason is yet. It could be their way of self-soothing. Or maybe they're getting some interesting sensory feedback from moving that way.
Like their own little science experiment.
Mm-hmm.
Which, let's be honest, is pretty adorable when you think about it that way.
Absolutely. And by observing your child closely without judgment, you might start to pick up on those subtle clues about their sensory preferences, their motor skills, their overall development.
So it's like becoming a detective in your own home. But instead of solving crimes, you're solving the mystery of your awesome backward-walking kid.
Precisely. Maybe you'll notice that they walk backwards more in certain environments or situations than others. Or maybe there are certain textures or sounds that seem to trigger it. Pay attention to those patterns because they can give you such valuable information.
Information that can help you create an environment where they can really thrive. This has been such a great deep dive, and I think we've given our listener a lot to think about.
Absolutely. And remember, if you are concerned about your child's development, don't hesitate to reach out to your pediatrician or a specialist. Early intervention is key, and it's never too early to advocate for your child's well-being.
Couldn't agree more. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We tackled the ins and outs of backward walking, explored potential connections to autism, and most importantly, emphasized the power of early intervention and a supportive environment. Remember, you are your child's best advocate. Trust your instincts, seek support when you need it, and above all, embrace the journey.
Beautifully said. And sometimes that journey might take you down a few unexpected paths. Don't be afraid to explore those detours. You never know what amazing discoveries await.